Welcome into the Trevor Staub Show, episode number 46. Today, we have a great episode. We have the man behind the logistics of Foundation, Bradley Jones, known on our platform mostly as All Business Brad. Thank you for joining me, Brad.
Of course. Thanks for having me on.
Yeah, so I think that this episode is something I thought of a while ago, early on in the show. And the primary reason I wanted to have you on is because I think most of our audience sees the output of Foundation. They see, a lot of the media that we do. And they kind of just see a lot of the goofy stuff, really,
right.
Within the sphere that we've created. But nobody really sees the input and the business-related tasks that have to occur to make all this possible. Obviously, we have a lot of moving wheels. We have the online retail store. There's more than just, the social stuff, which, yes, right. It is very fun and goofy. So this episode is kind of a business discussion related to not only Foundation, but the disc golf industry as a whole, because I think you have a good perspective on that. Mm-hmm. So if you're listening and that's what you're looking for, that's what we're going to talk. We're going to be talking business today. We're talking business. Mm-hmm. So just to start off, Brad, just go ahead and introduce the basics. Tell me a little bit about yourself.
All right. Hey, I'm Brad, as Trevor mentioned. So I've only been playing disc golf for a little over 2 years. I kind of got into it. I come from a business background. Essentially, I was a consultant that traveled all over the U.S. helping audiologists, ENT surgeons, hospitals, universities. They basically, if they had a failing program or one that wasn't headed toward the profit centers or helping people like the way that they wanted it to be, then I was hired to come in and I would do everything from train their staff, develop business plans, do strategic analysis of like marketing and financials, and then come up with a game plan and then drive the plan to get those businesses back to where they were going. So that's kind of where I came from. That's why I do what I do here probably. Mm-hmm. But I fell in love with disc golf. It kind of combined. I did traveling competitive archery when I was younger. So that like always, aiming, shooting, judging distances kind of fell naturally into it. And then I've always I played ultimate with my friends in high school. I've always thrown a Frisbee, thrown aerobies, whatever. That was always fun to me too. So kind of fell into place. I moved here in the spring of 2020 and I actually met Hunter and Silas at church. So we got to know each other. And then one day they were throwing disc in a field and I was like, hey, what's that? And they're like, disc golf. And then I was like, oh, all of those weird baskets in state parks in Ohio. That's what that was.
Yeah. So you're technically part of the COVID disc golf boom.
100%.
In a slightly different way. Mm-hmm. You met it obviously through Hunter and Silas, but yeah, technically part of the COVID boom.
I'm a proud COVID
golfer. There will be many, we'll definitely remember 10 years from now, there'll be so many PDGA members and everything that are part of that. Mm-hmm. So that's obviously kind of how you first discovered disc golf, but what is it, about the sport that first really drew you in? You mentioned the competitive archery, but was it an immediate love at first sight thing, or did it take a little bit is this actually kind of fun?
No, I think I loved it. I loved it initially just from I like throwing a Frisbee type object. That was fun. Yeah. And then when he took me out, I love hiking. Me and my wife and my 2 sons, we go hiking for fun anyway. And it was oh, this is fun. I'm out in the woods. I'm doing that. I love that it's competitive. I love that it's hey, here's a target. You got to hit it. The thing that also really made me fall that, I liked all of that. But what made me fall in love with it was there's a nerdy side of it. Oh, here's all the flight characteristics and all that. But also there's this community that I hadn't really felt since archery, because archery is a very niche, tiny sport where everyone kind of knows everybody. Everyone's really friendly. Everyone's hey, here's this thing, you try it. And there's a lot of giving, not a whole lot of receiving, which is, it's kind of cool, that supportive community. So that is what really made me fall in love with it, was the nerdy analytics side combined with the good people side of it too.
Yeah, I think the disc golf community certainly is a big part that brings people in and keeps them involved, because it's very accepting community. But I was very much into the nerdy side of disc golf when I got involved. Is the idea of collecting discs was almost more interesting to me than practicing. It's I watched in the bag videos. I wanted everything.
Yeah, I think I just now thought of that, but I came from the Pokemon card generation. I think there's that little bit of collectability, different stamps, different foils, different plastics that really kind of makes me excited about it too.
Yeah, definitely. So as somebody who had worked in business and was more business minded, when you got into disc golf, did you always see disc golf as a field for harvest, or was it at first just kind of seem you didn't really see the scope of the sport? Was it more just a small hobby?
I think like initially, like the first couple months, it seemed like a hobby, like something someone did for fun. Like, oh, I go play intramural X, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
But once I really saw it and I started watching coverage and I started seeing more and more people play and hear more and more people talk about it. And I think just like, I saw that growth curve in my head before it was ever put on a graphic.
Yeah.
And I definitely saw there was opportunity. You know, I think being an entrepreneur, I've had other businesses and things that I've done or created a business or product and then sold it off. I think just being an entrepreneur, I'm always thinking like, hey, is there a need or something that's going to happen? And I always want to try to get it like right before it happens. So I think I started to feel it. I didn't know like what it was going to look like, but there's definitely some feelings of like, hey, this is really accessible to everybody.
Yeah.
And this is growing because it's accessible. So like there's going to be areas of need that I think companies or people are going to be able to fill, but I don't know what that looks like because I don't know enough about it yet, really.
I think that is definitely, from a business perspective, the attractive side of disc golf. And the reason why it boomed during COVID is the accessibility, because it feels like a sport of infinite growth because the money is such a non-obstacle.
Yeah.
You know, how are people going, you know, how is it going to die out? Because like you look at golf, for example, and one of the big obstacles of golf is the fact that it isn't accessible. It's very expensive. But when you don't have that in the way, and it requires such a small amount of equipment, you know, and the parks are taking care of the courses. There's so many courses, like you definitely feel that like, if this isn't big now, it has to be eventually.
Right. Yeah. And I think there's also an element of, you know, let's just say there's I'm thinking like of a family perspective, right? Because, you know, at the time when I started getting into it, my youngest was 7, and there's like not a lot of things I can go be a dad and like have some one-on-one time and participate in that my kids could equally participate in. So like if I go try to play like a pickup like soccer game or like basketball or whatever, or even go ball golfing on a course, like that's not easily accessible for the entire family. But you know, my wife and my 2 boys, we all play, and it was very easy to get them excited about playing. And I'm not like sacrificing my little bit of free time to go by myself. I can now enjoy with everybody. So I think that's, hopefully that echoes for a lot of people. It seems to, you see a lot of families on the course. So
yeah. So moving forward, you know, a little bit in the timeline, how did you first find out about and learn about Foundation?
So I think just meeting Silas and Hunter, I didn't even know. I actually knew about channels like Robbie C First and Trash Panda. Shout out to Jesse. So I started watching a little bit of content when I started hearing about it. And I think Silas and Hunter are a little like humble, but they didn't really say, hey, we do this for a living. You know what I mean? Yeah. I found out later from someone else, and they're like, oh, do you know they have a YouTube channel? And I started seeing the logos on their shirt and stuff. I'm like, what is that?
Yeah.
So I really got introduced after I kind of already met Silas and Hunter, which is funny.
Yeah, that is funny. What did you, when you first saw the channel, was it were you kind of shocked? Like, oh wow, like you were surprised about I mean, at that time, we had a pretty big following at the time, probably 60,000 subscribers or so. So did that shock you a little bit, knowing Hunter and Silas? Yeah,
I'm like, wow, okay. So they're like really doing, like, I think everyone says like, oh, I have a YouTube channel or an Instagram, and they try to be a creator, and I'm like, oh, they're actually, like, Foundation's actually a thing. And again, looking at the scope of disc golf, I didn't imagine it was super big at the time. So like proportionally speaking, it seemed like that's a pretty big proportion of people interested. So I was shocked.
Yeah. So you learned about Foundation, and then I think I met you shortly after, before anything with Foundation, with Atlas, and that's kind of how we came to meet. But talk about, you know, kind of how you became to be hired with us, because I think it's just kind of an interesting story.
Yeah, hey, if anyone out there is listening and you're like, should I ask that question or should I like shoot my shot? Like, do it. So I was working at my other job. Again, I've been there for a while. I was like the youngest like executive in the company, and I was just not happy with it. Like, I mean, it was fun. I enjoyed the work where I was like helping people and helping their families, but as far as like a day to day, and I was flying all over the country multiple times a week and gone 3-4 days a week from my family. Yeah, just kind of drains on, like, after 8 years of that.
Right.
And I just happened to hear, like, I was a Foundation fan before I was an employee. Right. So I was listening to a podcast and I heard you guys mention, hey, yeah, maybe we should like get a behind the scenes guy or like a business guy to help grow. You mentioned it just like in foresight. And I was just like, you know what? I'm just going to mention it. You know, I don't know what that looks like. I don't know, you know, whatever. And I came in to talk to you guys about an Atlas related thing, because we were business partners before I became part of Foundation. And I think you all left, and I literally turned to walk out the door here in the studio because I was talking to Hunter about something, and I turned around and was like, you know what? I got to say something. So I mentioned it to Hunter, and Hunter was like very respectful. He was like, yeah, well, that would be great. I don't know what that looks like. We would probably want something like that eventually, but I don't even know what that looks like. I'd have to talk to Brody and everything about it. So, I just was like, well, seeds planted, no big deal. Well, I got a text like maybe the same day, if not the next day. And Hunter was like, yeah, Brody is interested in like talking more about that and seeing what that looks like. So it was literally just me before I walked out the door to ask a question. So
yeah, and I probably was. It was only a few weeks later, I think, that we actually decided to bring you on. If I'm
because I had like a 45-day like out clause with my previous employer.
Yeah.
So yeah, it was a while before I came on, but yeah, a couple weeks later, the decision was made. So it was escalated quickly.
I remember all the discussions because we knew that Hunter and I and Brody and at the was Paul still with the business at that point? I'm not sure. I think he might have been.
It was like right in that
in the in-between phase. But anyway, in any case, everybody involved, we were really small at that time. And we were always a very much, grow as needed type business, but we knew in the back of our minds that there was probably an opportunity that we were missing just because there wasn't many of us, and B, like, this is a lot of we had gone to school and like we had some experience and a lot of practical experience, but we kind of only knew what we knew.
Right.
And we knew that we didn't want to trap ourselves in the disc golf bubble essentially and be in that spot where it's like everything we know is the disc golf industry. And I went to school for sport management, so I know how those other industries work, but I've never worked in them a ton. Right. So it's like we knew that we need to bring in somebody from the outside, something that we've always kind of like almost preached on air is like we think companies should hire from outside. So it's like we need to do that so that we can make sure that we are bringing in business principles from outside disc golf into our organization to really turn things up. So I remember it being like a very exciting time because we were just like, what's going to happen? Like we didn't know. Like we were kind of like starting to move in that direction. But yeah, you mentioned before kind of your business experience before coming to work at Foundation, helping other businesses kind of grow. It's kind of like, we weren't a business that was in trouble. We were profitable at the time, but we knew that there was a opportunity to sophisticate ourselves more and put ourselves in a really good direction. So first question about kind of working with Foundation is what excited you most about working in disc golf when you first were able to transition in?
I think there's just like I think everyone maybe has that job or like a dream job where they like play in their head like only if, but because like at the end of the day, like the decisions I made in my last role, some of them really like could have some pretty not so great like recourse if they happen. It would affect people's lives and families and things like that. But here it's just like if I find myself getting stressed or something, I literally say in my head, dude, you work with Frisbees all day. Like calm down. Yeah. So like that's nice. Like I think the stress-free environment, and watching your videos and like knowing you guys, like that's who you guys really are. And it excited me to work in a place that's just kind of like energetic and like creative, because again, I get to be creative as like a business person and like solve problems, but there's not like a lot of things I was bringing in that were creative. Actually, some of my creativity is pretty squashed. So that excited me too. So just a good, like a healthy environment that's like creative and just like energetic. And there's like nothing excites me more than like seeing like potential in something and like being like the architect behind that. Like I don't ever like intend to like, this show's very flattering. I don't ever intend to be the guy in front of the camera. But I like being the guy that can say to myself, hey, like I helped it get from A to B. So like that was exciting too. There was a lot of untapped potential. Yeah, I can't obviously I was lucky enough that, my job, I worked in college, I worked a full-time job, but then this was my first, big boy job essentially was working at Foundation. And so I never had to be in more of a, a super corporate sphere where there's a lot of things in place. And, I'm basically working in an environment that is, I don't know how to explain it really. It's a zoo. It's a zoo. Yeah. It's very free flowing in the sense that we can kind of we have an idea, we can make it happen. And so like that is something that is certainly cool about here.
So you first get into foundation, you go from seeing it from the outside to now you're on the inside. You see our financials, you see our structure, everything. What surprised you, or let's start here. What were the biggest areas for improvement that you saw with foundation right away? Like, whoa, that needs to be improved.
The biggest things initially were like customer service and processes, because I think there's, before you can worry about expanding, you have to really fix like, I hate that I just backed myself to this corner. The foundational pieces of the
it
business.
happens more than you think.
Yeah. So anyway, but yeah, like the fundamental parts, like you have to make sure your people are happy, your tribe's happy. You have to make sure that the processes are in place that can not only help you be successful with the stage you're at, but the stage that you can grow to. Because if you have a process, you can typically expand on it. But if you have no process, then that's just going to get messier and messier as you elongate or expand the process.
Yeah. It's like, I guess it's like having a crack in the cornerstone of a skyscraper, basically.
Yeah.
It's like, it's going to come back to bite you eventually.
Yeah. Like, one centimeter of like misdirection or mismeasurement here, like on the top level is going to be feet of, so yeah, that's definitely important. So that was the biggest area for sure when I came in.
What do you think surprised you the most about the way we were being run at the time? Like, was there something that you were like, I cannot believe that's actually how this happens?
I don't know. I think that, because kudos to you guys over the last year, you're like recording and like content schedules, like, well, it's a schedule now, but I think before it was just kind of like
completely improvised.
Yeah. I'm like, hey, Hunter, can we talk about, well, no, I'm like in North Carolina filming right now. And I'm like, oh, okay. Yeah. Have fun. So I think that there was like a lot of, you guys were very successful with a lot of like, I don't know, almost unspoken things. Like you all knew what was going on, but none of it was like apparent to anyone. Yes. It was like a mystery.
That is true. It's like, and that's like, that came along with the fact that we had like 4 employees.
Right.
But yeah, we definitely had gotten to a place where like we all kind of knew what was going on, but it came back to bite us at times because it wasn't written out. And then you bring in new people and it gets even harder.
Yeah.
So yeah, we used to literally every day was like an improvisation. Like we didn't know what we were going to do that day. It was and a lot of that had to do because we had so many different functions. We were the ones doing the orders and the videos. So like we had to just adjust on the fly. Yeah, it was crazy. Like when I think about it, it was crazy. So as you begin getting further onto the inside track of the disc golf industry, I want to talk a lot about just like the disc golf industry as a whole, because it's fascinating. Was it what you expected getting into disc golf business, or was it much different?
It was very different. I think I heard you guys all.
We
told
warned
me.
you, yeah.
You told me,
yeah.
But I'm like, okay, maybe, but like, how different is it? It's very different, and I don't mean this disparagingly at all to anybody in disc golf. It's just like the mentality of it being a business is not really there to anybody.
Yeah,
and that's fine. I think there's like some beautiful things that happen out of that. Like there's a lot of charity and things like that, which 100%. And I think it's been a big push for me and you and Hunter and everybody here. We're trying to give back a little bit more and invest in like, community and things like that. But, it just really shocked me. Like no one that's a business owner, not no one, I'm sorry. A lot of people that are business owners in disc golf are not business people.
Yeah.
And again, you all told me that, but it was very shocking. Like the number, I was like, oh, maybe like 10% are not, but like the other 90% are, and we're just involved with 10%. It's more like, I would say 30% of people in disc golf businesses are business people. I'm using air quotes. And then the other 70 are just people that had a passion or an idea, and they just ran with it.
Just very homegrown. Yeah. Disc golf, like I said, like it is this bubble that, because everybody inside of it for so long just kind of grew up and stayed in that bubble. It's like, it's just like kind of this isolated thing where they figured out their own system and their own ways of doing things. So when the more people that come in from outside the sport, it's a huge shakeup. And that's why, some people like it, some people don't. But
right.
Along with that, what were some of the early hurdles that you had to overcome within the disc golf industry to implement your plans and ideas?
Yeah, I think one of the biggest I think this goes for any business that if you like cross over to other industries or whatever, I'm gonna say nomenclature or language, like just like the language it's spoken, not only just like, I'm like, their frisbee, again, this is me being dumb. Like their frisbees, how much difficulty is there? Like, and then looking at someone like Trilogy, where there's like 400 plastic types for every, and all that's different. And like the business models and pricing models are different from every manufacturer. Like and then even like content, like I was not a content creator, so I didn't
Yeah.
speak that language either. Like knowing how to monetize and like do like sell ads and like, cause I do all that stuff too. So like there was a lot of like language and just like functionality that I didn't understand that took me, admittedly, I was maybe a little arrogant. Like I was like, oh, I'll learn in a month. It maybe took me 3 or 4 months to really get a handle on it. So
Yeah, that's certainly a big part of it when trying to curate all that stuff. Just, I mean, I can't even like, I am so involved in disc golf at this point, and it is really hard for me to keep up with all of the like different types of plastics and molds and discs and everything going on. Like I feel like I don't have as good a grip on it as I did when I was like 14 because I just used to like pour into it a ton.
Yeah.
So what are some of the main disconnects between how disc golf businesses function and how other industries operate in your experience?
There's really a lot. I think it's kind of what makes disc golf like really cool and like just unique. But like the big disconnects are, I'm going to use this like example. This happened recently, so forgive me. I'll probably get flamed for this, but we just recently used a discount code to kind of celebrate Simon's announcement with MVP.
Yeah.
Right. We got some hate from that because they said, hey, you know, how dare you? You're making money off the player. But in the scheme of things, if you really break it down and think about that, Simon signed on to MVP. They're paying him. MVP has to sell discs to pay Simon that ungodly amount of money they promised him, right? So there's nothing wrong with a partnership of like, we're a partner of MVP. We buy discs from them to sell them. The more we sell, the more we buy from them, the more they can pay people like Simon. Like there's nothing wrong with us as a retailer being like, hey, let's celebrate our tribe.
Yeah.
Hey, this is a gift to you. Let's celebrate Simon. Hey, maybe try some stuff you haven't tried before. But we got flamed for that because people are like, hey, you didn't pay him. But these are the same people that are also like, I want to play a tournament and get all this free stuff, but not pay anything.
Yeah.
So like there's some like, I'll call it cash flow or business flow, like mindset that's not there. And that's fine. Like not everyone has to think like that. I'm just saying there's definitely disconnect there. But in other worlds, like that I come from, it's very clear, like what people perceive as what's happening.
Yeah.
And they understand like this money goes here, which flows to here, which goes to there.
Yeah.
And then they're like, okay, that makes sense why you did that. So again, I think it's just the transition probably in the industry of going from like a true hobby, like niche thing to it's actually, you're getting bigger brands. Like we're noticing bigger brands approaching us for marketing and like YouTube ads and things that are like outside of disc golf. So it's becoming more of a business now than it ever has been. And I think that's going to be a little bit of a learning curve for everybody.
Yeah.
So
I think a lot of it comes from like there's this protectiveness, especially surrounding players, because we've run into this issue before. We ran way back in the day. We ran a shirt that said TJ USA. And it was it was like for me, but it was to play off the KJ USA. And people literally were like, is KJ getting part of this? When it had nothing to do with him really.
Yeah.
And there's this, it's like, it comes from a good place because people are protective of the players because disc golf comes from somewhere where players needed every penny they could get.
Correct.
And there are still some players in those situations, but then there are guys that are getting paid millions of dollars and it becomes like A, we're not stealing their intellectual property, and B, they're it's not what it used to be. It's not, but I think, like I said, it's just an adjustment as we get to this point where, hey, our players are all making good livings now. Like this is starting to become a reality. It's not like it used to be, but because it did used to be that way. You know, you had every penny had to be earned.
Well, it's just like, in the same respect, like if we made a joke about Simon and put Simon on a shirt and then sold that shirt and nothing went to Simon, there's a problem with that.
Right.
But the way that we were talking about earlier, like that, it's just us using marketing and making timing a part of our marketing.
Yeah, definitely. So kind of on the flip side of that coin, are there any parts of the disc golf industry that other industries could learn from?
I mean,
at all.
This is maybe like a personal, maybe this is like a personal preference.
Yeah.
So maybe not like a unbiased one, but I think there's a lot of effort into like sustainability and community in disc golf that is just like, it's always the last thought on other businesses' mind.
Yeah, it's more of a check this box to make sure we're good.
Yeah, we're just aligned with those people that care about trees or whatever. But this is more like in disc golf, that's more of like a forethought. Like it's like, okay, we're going to make this product. Is there a way we can get the community or like save the planet involved immediately versus like, hey, we've had this product for like 3 years. Can we do something now? So I think that's good. I think there's nothing wrong with that. Again, from a community aspect, I think the more you get people to buy in and be a part of your tribe and that like love what you do, it like builds your brand and gives you stability. So like that's, I think, a good thing with disc golf is there's like a lot of like loyalty and like amongst everyone, you know, Foundation fans are Foundation fans. Thank you for that. But MVP fans are Innova, like Simps are Innova Simps. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like that's what's built there because community is like a forethought. And then also like sustainability is important. We should all be doing it in everyday life. Again, personal preference, but there's nothing, no one's being harmed by thinking about those things up front.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, I think that there's certainly some of the things that disc golf has prioritized and it can only really do good. So during your time at Foundation, it's been a while now. From the start to present day, what are some of the things that you're most proud of that you've been able to accomplish here?
One of them is probably like the team we've built here. I mean, it was only like 4 of you. Now we have 11. So like that's huge. And we didn't just like throw 11 people together. I think we have a really solid group of people. We just did evaluation, like year-end evaluations yesterday. It's just like, I told Hunter, I'm like, it's very rare. Every company has like one person that's like, man, that's the guy. You give them something, they're going to go 110%. You know, everybody has that guy. Like we have a whole team full of those guys, which is really cool. And everybody is now starting to feel like, you know, we're starting to see everyone's skills and individual things develop. So that's been really great. So I'm really proud of the team that we've all put together and the team that continues to be here. And frankly, the team that's going to continue to grow very quickly. Another one, and this sounds like so, like this is very corporate of me to say, but like I'm very proud that I got you and Hunter on board. Like we have an internal mission statement now and an external one, but I'm proud of the alignment that we have of the team because I think what it's allowed us to do is tackle some pretty complicated things quickly because we can self-check and say, hey, does this fit our external mission statement to our fans and our customers and our supporters? And also internally, is this like keeping true to what we want to be? And I think that's very key for any organization. Like one of the few things that, here's 2 free business tips for everybody listening if you have a business.
All right.
2 things you fix immediately. Number 1, if you have a business that's in trouble or you want to grow, the first thing you can fix is your average sale price of whatever item or service you have. Because if you can double that number or, you know, grow it by 25%, a lot of other problems go away very quickly. So that's number 1, the first thing you go in to fix. And number 2, which is equally as tied to number 1, is define who you are, what you believe in, and what you're trying to do so you can align everybody to one thing. Because if not, you have different pieces going in different directions and you'll never grow to your full potential. And I've talked to quite a few disc golf like entrepreneurs and companies now at this point. And that's like the first piece of advice. I'm like, hey, have you had this conversation with your employees or your other co-owners? Like that's the biggest thing to like work on because you have to know what you believe in, where you're going for something to be successful. So I'm proud of both of those. Both probably seem very weird. Like we've opened the Foundation Charleston franchise. Obviously proud of that, but I'm just saying like personal, tangible things that are going to like carry with us with our growth, like those are definitely in there. But Foundation Charleston, you're close third, number 1 on my heart. Yeah,
I definitely think that the team we built is really cool because when it was like 4 or 5 of us, whatever, you know, we'd always kind of say to each other like, we have this really cool thing going with our like environment, and we all kind of just like assumed like it's gonna go away someday. Like we knew it wasn't forever, but we keep growing, and you know we have 11 now, and it still feels that way and it's really just been enhanced. So I think it's cool to like we've been able to realize that if we find the right people and really are intentional about building our team, that we can keep that the thing that we thought we could only have when there was 4 of us. You know, we can keep that intact. So that is certainly like I think it's awesome what we've been able to build with our staff, and I think we have such a great team. So that's certainly been really cool. Last question. Kind of looking towards the future, what are some of your main goals and your vision for Foundation moving forward? Just broad or even really specific, even if it's just like changing a desk or something. Yeah.
Now, there's a couple broad things. Number 1, I think we've had success with our retail store here, and we've had success with the guys in Charleston as a franchise. Those are 2 different models, obviously, but I think the next obvious step for us is to look out for other franchises and other retail stores we can open in strategic spots. Like they're going to have to make sense, and there's investment that goes into those. But I think with the success we've seen in both of those, that's definitely a spot that's going to continue to grow. And I'm looking forward to that. I mean, that's probably some of my like road warrior mentality. I'm looking forward to like traveling and researching and meeting those people in different cities, and like seeing you guys travel for Bogey Bro battles and stuff. It only makes sense to have like supporting locations you can visit while you're out on the road. I think we're also going to be focused a lot on growing like our brand in different ways, which I'm really excited about. So like, you know, there's obviously new podcasts coming out. There's new shows coming out. Obviously more people are getting involved in our content, and then our internal team is growing. And I always get excited about leading people and like doing some project management. So I'm really excited about that. And there's also some like things behind the scenes we're working on. I don't want to like kind of like shout out at the moment, but there's some other like we'll call them revenue streams we're working on in the background that I'm excited about.
Cool. Awesome. Well, I think that it was great getting some a little bit of insight on the inside of Foundation. If you're interested in more kind of business oriented episodes, I've always, you know, I try to keep a broad spectrum of guests on the show. A lot of times it's obviously disc golf athletes, but I'm personally really interested. You know, I have a few episodes. One of the early ones I did was with one of the sales and marketing guys for MVP, Steve Holloway. He's no longer there. But I really like getting people from the business side of disc golf because it's fascinating. It's something I'm involved in. So if that's something if you'd like to see more of, make sure to comment that down below. Make sure to hit that like button as well while you're at it. And Brad, thank you so much for joining the show today.
Hey, I appreciate being on. Thanks so much for having me.
Yeah, absolutely. And we'll see you next week for another great episode.